Sup fellow nerds, it is good to see you. Hello, hello, hello. Week 2 begins and we're going to travel further than ever before into the Wild Blue Yonder. First of all, a very quick thank you to everybody who watched, who liked, who commented, whatever on last week's video, and everyone who subscribed as well. Good grief, it's already the second most viewed video on my channel in a week. That's nuts, and it really goes to show people are back on board with Doctor Who. Anyway, how did the second fare? Well, I'm going to get this one out of the way since it's right at the start. This whole Isaac Newton cold open was completely irrelevant. Why? Because it was for 3 utterances of a single joke mavity. Just completely irrelevant. Really, the TARDIS crashing onto this ship and then buggering off again, leaving the Doctor and Donna stranded, should have been when the titles kicked in. And also, based on last week's comments, I'm glad to know that I wasn't the only one who thought these titles looked, and, well, still look, that little bit iffy. And second of all, a quicken, the colourblind casting of Newton. As much as Doctor Who throws historical figures into bonkers situations, it's always treated that context, that character, that historical figure seriously. Charles Dickens, Shakespeare, Agatha Christie, Nikola Tesla, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King. But for those instances, colourblind casting never came into play. Now I'm all for it for colourblind casting if the setting, the context is right to do so. The most sort of known example in recent memory is America Then as told by America Now. Hamilton. I'm gonna try not to go too deep into Hamilton because it's an absolute masterpiece. But anyway, this decision, colourblind casting Isaac Newton, regardless of how good of an actor Nathaniel Curtis is, this was unnecessary. And it's going to go on the unnecessary shelf with the male presenting line from last week. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. Except, yes, he's hot. And to be honest, the Doctor as a character, regardless of the incarnation, I've always felt has had the same kind of approach as the Todd from Scrubs.
What? The Todd appreciates hot, regardless of gender.
Anyway, the Doctor and Donna are stranded on a ship, and this corridor shot's looking a little bit ropey. Now I know that there's a lot of charm in Doctor Who and its jankiness of the whole thing. I mean, Matey got eaten by green bubble wrap back in the 70s or something. But I think this shot sticks out so much because last week the VFX bar was set so high, so I think I really expected a lot more from it. That, and it was compounded by those absolutely beautiful shots of the camera drone outside the ship. I mean, look at this. These were absolutely world-class effects, which made that corridor look even worse, coming back to it later. So, they're at the edge of the universe, and there's something on board. Something that didn't show up in the scans. Something potentially spooky. We were teased that Wild Blue Yonder was going to be really scary, and I was really excited about that. The Doctor and Donna are chatting away until we realise they're both chatting to each other in separate rooms at the same time. This sequence was honestly sublime. The Doctor stepping into the room, standing up against the wall and sliding to the floor, all entirely in the background, that already spoke volumes. If this were the Doctor feeling defeated because he'd found out something that proved they were both completely screwed, he would have been front and centre. But no, he was pushed to the background. He was blocked and framed in such a way that he really wasn't the focal point. And that's hugely uncharacteristic in the way that they literally frame and portray the Doctor in his own show. Then when it cut to, air quotes, Donna walking in on the Doctor, the penny dropped. Exactly what I hoped it would be. Doctor? Donna? Say hello to John Carpenter's The Thing. Oh boy, this is gonna get good. This is gonna get scary. Imposters on a ship might be a done trope in horror, but hot damn is it effective when it's done well. My arms are too long. That self-realization, that arrogant confidence upon being sort of made, it makes a creature just so much more scary. It's like a Zygon being discovered and being all smug about it. At least looking like the smartest creature in the room can really make your prey's hair stand on end. And while this corridor looked a little wank, also the less said about the little car the better, these practical, disproportionate arms and hands looked wicked. Just something slightly unnervingly different to throw the whole visage off. It just worked so well as a springboard for Wild Blue Yonder to just bound off. And much like an arm with a handspan big enough to wank off Godzilla and an iffy leg with 2 knees, I'm going to uncharacteristically jump to the end of my review, because Wild Blue Yonder had an absolutely cracking premise. Not something overtly original, of course, though the spin on the alien imposter learning as it goes was a fresh addition, but for me, while I didn't think it was overtly lacking, come the credits, it's a perfectly cromulent episode. I just think there could have been so much more. First of all, the creatures. 1. I love when a threat is kept entirely anonymous. Not every single creature the Doctor fights needs a name and a home planet and a social security number and a body count. Imagine if the Midnight Entity had a name, a character, a reason for its malicious intent. Wouldn't that kind of detract from just how bloody terrifying that episode was? So, for these copy imitation things, tick. Second, David and Catherine playing themselves, but not themselves. Just enough to make that unnerving, uncanny valley portrayal work. Also tick. But what was not tick? The fear. Donna made an explicit point of that these creatures were trying to scare them, and the Doctor deduced it was to drum up adrenaline, blood flow, and consequently thoughts pouring from their minds for these beasts to feed and learn from. But when exactly were they scaring them? Ballooning creatures chasing a tiny cart while some poor sod on the VFX team was going to absolute town on the liquefy tool? Nope. Donna melting into a puddle of Donna and the Doctor reenacting the music video to Big Bad Wolf by Duck Sauce? No. Also, go and watch that music video, it's weird and brilliant. No. If anything, we got a slightly weird, almost humorous take on the potential of body horror when it comes to an alien imposter. Of course, we couldn't go all the way like The Thing did, but we could have pushed Doctor Who's limits, and we've seen this really kind of scary stuff before. Dr. Constantine, the poor buggers who got turned into dolls in Night Terrors, even the dudes who split their heads open in The Return of Dr. Mysterio. Doing something like that in place of puddles and backbends would have made that potential horror in Wild Blue Yonder so much more realised. Even play into the unknown of these creatures by having these horrific transformations happen off screen, or even as a reverse shot, in the foreground, in the shadow, happening right in front of our friends, the Doctor and Donna. Get the Foley artists, slap a week-old steak into month-old soup or something. Just really lean into that fleshy, bone-crackingly horrible sound that we've heard in Doctor Who before, off screen. Do that to really make these two imposter copy creatures really something scary. And that's on the one hand. On the other, we got a sniff of psychological trauma, which we'll get back to. But that's something that I would have really liked the Doctor to have kind of really hammered into Donna during this episode. I would have loved to have seen this Doctor getting all up in Donna's grill about how she'll never get home, she'll never know the warmth of her earth beneath her feet, how her Gramps will just be sitting and waiting there just as she theorised until his last days, and he'll never get to see her again. How her daughter, Rose, who she cares so much about, is going to age and wither and die, only ever believing that her mother abandoned her for some skinny guy in a suit. Really 1-2 punch the visual or implied body horror with psychological trauma. Make them suffer like Donna says they're doing come the point when they're back in the cockpit. I know we've got the family angle to the show, and I know they can't go too deep down that terror rabbit hole, save for, alienating their audience and a lot of complaints to Ofcom, but I don't think Wild Blue Yonder pushed the boat out, A, as far as it could go, and more importantly, B, as much as they were kind of teasing it to go. Going back to that psychological trauma I said I'd get back to, the Flux. We did know there was going to be a very explicit reference in Wild Blue Yonder to those events, and yeah, by God, they didn't beat around the bush with it. It happened. The Doctor apparently annihilated half the universe, and he feels pretty damn bad about it. Two things came of this. One good, one not so good. The good, it's incredible how one quick, almost fleeting scene of 14 just going to absolute town on a grill wall on this ship showed more emotion than 13 did while she actually lived through the entire ordeal. It kind of goes to show how if Chris had given Jodie that moment, that sort of visceral emotional release during series 13, I think it would have made it more abundantly clear about how much of a big deal this really was for her. But she never got that opportunity. So throughout that whole thing and to the end of her tenure, her characterization remained half-baked and morally ambiguous. The bad thing? Well, the universe is half-bollocked and we still really haven't seen anything of it. We just know that it did happen. Earth seemed pretty happy-go-lucky, all things considered, in the Star Beast, and it's not like the whole thing, along with Sontarans and Lupari all over Earth, were retconned and everyone forgot. I know that Donna's supposed to be completely oblivious to, aliens and stuff before the Doctor came back again, but it still feels like it happened, but it kinda didn't. Maybe there's still further echoes of the flux to come? Next up, and finally, the ending. The Doctor was without the Sonic the whole time, which meant he had to go about things by, licking stuff or thinking things, which, technically he shouldn't really have been doing. The robot is going to nuke the ship, and that was the only way to stop these shapeshifters wreaking havoc across the universe. Taking the Doctor's superpower of being really bloody clever and using it against him through these two imposters was chef's kiss, beautiful. But while it's not so much a Deus Ex Machina, their means of escape, the fact that TARDIS just kind of rocked up felt more like a happy coincidence more than anything. Yes, the Doctor and Donna were both aware that HADS was in play, but it didn't feature as a conscious means to an end, a tool which the Doctor could use to get out of this peril. You could argue that yes, if the Doctor had thought of this as a potential solution, his copy would know. But I would play it out that the Doctor would play it off as being so cocksure that the self-destruct being the only way out of this scenario, and overstuffing the copies with information and pushing them to go bounding down the corridor after the robot, only to hesitate enough after they've run away to be out of mental earshot, to kind of go, yeah, I've sped this countdown up enough to know they're not going to make it, because I know that HADS is going to deactivate and the TARDIS will come back. It's a tricky situation to be in, I guess, because with that threat and resolution being so narratively fragile, they're really tough to balance. I suppose then that the ending where it just kind of happens makes the most sense. I would argue that it's not the most satisfying one, but we did get the Doctor skating the TARDIS along like it's a hoverboard from Back to the Future Part 2. Finally, we got Wilf one episode earlier than I think we were all expecting, which was just so lovely. We both sat here like this thinking, oh my god, it's so nice. And then, they kicked us while we were down and dedicated the episode to him, the late Bernard Cribbins. Lovely. So, Wild Blue Yonder. I don't really know how this review is coming across to you tonally. I'm putting this at a 6.57 out of 10, maybe. I think it's lost a few points because, like I said, I didn't hate it. I just really think they could have done so much more with such a fantastic premise. It didn't feel like a first draft that needed fleshing out. It felt like a solid concept that needed more flamboyancy, needed more of that sparkle to really make it stand out as a 60th special. Not wasted potential, far from it, but potential unrealised nonetheless. But what did you think of Wild Blue Yonder? Let me know in the comments below. Always love reading the comments, just don't go being a twat about your opinions. And if you do like this video and you have liked the stuff I've done, then please do consider subscribing to my channel for more. Next week, these three specials come to a head with Neil Patrick Harris as the Toymaker. Good gravy. What a casting. I am super stoked to see how this all ends. It'll end with shooty, assumedly. But thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for all of that immediate support of me coming back on for reviewing. I really, really do appreciate each and every one of you. Take care of yourselves. Have a good week. I'll see you next week.